Hello, and welcome to Simple Steps to Online Success with Deanna Fenton, brought to you by DeannaFenton.com. Deanna is your go-to gal for all things techie. She will show you how to break down all that confusing internet marketing jargon and how to take simple steps to move your business to online success. And there's no geek speak allowed. Now, here's your host, Deanna Fenton.
Okay, hi, this is Deanna Fenton, and today it's my great pleasure to do an interview with a good friend of mine, Ellyn Bader, and we're going to be talking today a little bit about Ellyn's journey into creating an online business. And I met Ellyn several years ago. I don't know, Ellyn, I think it was like 2010 or so.
Yeah, it might have been that long ago. It doesn't seem quite that long, but it might have been, actually.
And both Ellyn and I were part of Laurel Langmeyer's Live Out Loud coaching group. We actually initially met at one of Laurel's cash machines, and we've actually been in a mastermind together for almost that entire time. We have learned a lot about each other's business and worked together, and I consider Ellyn a great friend, and I'm extremely happy to talk to her today about her venture, because Ellyn initially started, I guess, as your career as a family therapist.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about how she made a transition to an online business, which I think is fascinating and probably of interest to a lot of people who are looking at how they might branch out from their current business. So, Ellyn, can you tell me a little bit about, first of all, yourself and the Couples Institute and how it evolved?
Sure. So I'm Ellyn Bader, and I founded and directed the Couples Institute, which my husband and I created together. And it's kind of a nice story about that because a little while after we got married, we decided we wanted to do something together, and we didn't know what it was, so we called it X. And for a year, we discussed all kinds of possibilities about what X might be. And we had some pretty wild ideas, including importing houseboats from India. We even went to India to look at houseboats.
Oh, gosh, I'd like to know how that came about.
Well, I mean, it was not a very good idea, especially given that these houseboats, which are on Lake Srinagar, can't even leave the area. They're made of this incredible wood that you can't even get them out of there. So I don't know what we were thinking, but we were young and naive and
seemed like a good idea at the time, huh?
Exactly. But eventually, I mean, we were both already psychologists, and I had begun to develop a real interest in couples' relationships and what made them work well and what didn't. And as you said, I started out as a family therapist, and I saw a lot of families where kids were in trouble and nobody was helping the parents, and a lot of times the parents had issues and those were affecting the kids. And so eventually we created some workshops that got a really wonderful response, and we decided to start the Couples Institute and specialize in working with couples. And so we've been doing that now ever since 1984.
I had seen that on your bio on your website. It was like that. What a fantastic career, all those years to be working on that.
Well, it's been quite a journey. And as you said, a lot of it, I mean, it's only been recently that it's been online for about the last 5 years or so. In fact, I was one of those people who dragged my feet about even getting a website to begin with, because I consider myself not a very techie person at all. And I was intimidated by it to begin with. And so I kind of avoided it. But once I decided, okay, now it's really time to start learning this. I have to come into the modern age. So I started it just with an idea. I mean, started learning about the internet and learning about internet marketing, not with an idea of really creating as much of an online business as I now have, but just from a pure learning standpoint.
And you followed a lot. I mean, we followed a lot of the same people in terms of sounds bad, but the internet marketing gurus. And so who was the first person you started to follow to start to educate yourself about online marketing?
Well, actually, the very first internet marketing shop that I ever went to was with Armin Morin and Alex Mendosian. And they just happened to be doing something that was right near the school that our daughter was going to college at. And so I was searching around online, and I found what they were doing, and I thought I would go. And I went to that, and Oh my God, did I feel like I'd been hit by an avalanche when I was in that workshop. I didn't understand the language. I didn't know what people were talking about. But it was kind of fun and intriguing and interesting. So I decided to just throw myself into learning like it was a new subject in college or something. And so I began to read from other people as well. I learned some things from Rich Sheffrin and just many different people along the way, really.
And so then how did you decide to go ahead and start your training program online? Or did you do the training program offline first and then decide to expand it? Or how did that come about? Well,
I had been actually training therapists for many, many years, mostly all in live presentations. So it was pretty common for me to do a 2-day workshop in different cities in the United States. I had done a lot of training in some European countries and Australia. And one of the things was I didn't want to travel as much. So that was one of the reasons that I decided I wanted to try the online training. And actually, when I first mentioned it to my husband, he thought I was out of my mind. And that it wasn't.
I didn't like the houseboats.
Yeah, well, he thought this was a really crazy idea. So when I first tried it online, I said, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll use Instant Teleseminar and I'll just go ahead and try to create it. I mean, I'd done all these live trainings, but I'd never done anything online. But I thought, well, let's see what it's like to teach online. And so I did it by setting up a training program, seeing if anybody would sign up for it, and teaching live on the telephone.
And what kind of response did you get? And how did you find the people that were interested in doing it online? Was it very difficult, or?
It wasn't that hard because I had a mailing list that I had built up from doing the presentations. So I had started, because when I first got my website and learned about it, I started creating an email list. And when I would go and speak, I would ask people if they wanted to be on my newsletter list. And so I had, but when I sent out the ad for the training, I said, one of the things I said in that ad was, you might think I'm crazy, and I may even think I'm crazy, but I'm going to try this thing that I've never tried before. And if you're willing to be a pioneer and you're willing to experiment with me, I'd love to have you. And so I look at that first group as very much of an experimenting kind of situation. And that first training program was 3 hours a month in which I was teaching online. So 3 different hours, like 3 Mondays or 3 Fridays spread out throughout the month. And I liked it. I liked the interaction. I particularly liked the cross-cultural aspect of it. I really like having people in so many different countries involved. And it's really great that they can help each other out.
That's awesome. So you have people from all over the world that are taking these courses.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But then when I finished that one, I also started to try to think of a slightly different model to do it because it was really labor intensive. And I also wanted to have more things eventually in it. But I didn't want to exhaust myself doing it either. So I decided to do it one more time the same way I did it, but that time to record everything I was doing, which I hadn't done the first time. And to record it, transcribe it, rewrite it. So I rewrote the whole program so that some of it could be written and some of it could be audio. And then I remarketed it at that point.
Well, it's funny that when we start out, we don't think about that. It's just we kind of do it. And then it's like, well, if I had offered it in different forms, if I record it, if I transcribe it, then I have other material that I can repackage or repurpose. So you figured that out the second time, which is great.
Well, yeah, I figured it out before the second time, but then I had to do it the whole second time to create it all. And then rewriting it took a lot of work because it's different when you speak something than when you read it.
Yeah. I worry about that too when I get things transcribed. It doesn't come across quite the same.
No. And so I spent a lot of time editing and rewriting and creating lessons that people would get. So now what's evolved is a 1-year-long training program for the first year. And in that 1-year program, I basically have lessons that people receive every couple of weeks.
And then do you have group calls on a monthly basis or on a regular basis?
Yeah, I have group calls at least once a month where I'm consulting on people's cases, and I also have a lot of interaction going on in a private area of their website where people can discuss their challenges. And then I also have quite frequently other experts come in and share their expertise, or I've even had you come in and teach a business call too. So I do support them in their efforts to build an effective practice as well, because the whole drive behind this is ending premature and unnecessary divorces, because there's so many unnecessary divorces that happen. And too often I saw couples who were saying things to me like, all our last therapist did was let us fight. Oh. And I know that good couples therapy is not about people coming in and fighting. It's really much more of a learning and developing new emotional skills that they don't have. And so, I just wanted to have a broader reach and be able to help more therapists be able to do better work.
And I would imagine it's an extremely stressful job to begin with. So I'm sure a lot of your students are not only looking for, the professional skills, but maybe sort of an emotional outlet too, or learning how to deal with the emotional component of it.
Yeah, they're looking for support. They're looking for the ability to say, what do I do now? I have no idea what to do next. And to know that other people have been there, and to get really concrete, specific feedback too about ideas about what to do next.
And what percentage is about the business or the practice development? Because that is really interesting, because I remember I did a teleseminar with your group on blogging I think it was on blogging, something like that. So it's interesting to think about they're also looking for those kinds of marketing skills and lessons on how to be able to market themselves.
I found in doing that those were the least attended calls, actually, of everything I did. And I still do them occasionally, but I don't make it as big of a focus, because they really want the clinical skills more at this point. And the marketing skills would be great for them to have, but it's not the reason they sign up.
Right. Just kind of an added bonus.
Exactly.
I know you had mentioned when you had built your list, a lot of it was because you were doing the live trainings. Did you do anything through your website or any other way to kind of build that list, or how did that come about?
Well, now I do a lot of other things. And it's all been gradual as I've learned more. But it started with doing a newsletter. And we actually have two different blogs on the website now. One is for couples themselves, and the other one is for therapists and professionals. And so, sometimes people share those. Sometimes people find our website due to the topic. We have a few articles on passive-aggressive people, and those are pretty popular articles.
I happen to like the videos that you and Pete do. So, because Ellyn and her husband actually do several videos where they show examples of interactions with couples. It's really great.
Well, I think in our one on Chore Wars is one of the favorites.
Yeah.
Because we talk about our own struggles with getting household chores done. And so anyway, so part of it is through newsletters. More recently, we've done a fair bit with social media, particularly with Facebook, some with LinkedIn. And so I think those, and then encouraging people to ask their friends to sign up as well, or just to pass something on to their friends. And it's just been, a pretty conscientious, lot of work, but it's been a process of building that over time and building the communication. We provide a lot of good free material to the people on our website who are on our list, so most of them stay for quite a while.
So you're just following kind of the typical online marketing process of, identifying, first of all, you had a very, very specific niche, had a specific target, and they had very specific needs that you could help them with in terms of being able to develop their skills as a family therapist. And then creating your expertise, but because you were speaking around the world probably, right? And you and Pete had written a book, and so you had the expertise and a lot of recognition from that as well. But it's just interesting in terms of that you had followed the internet marketing gurus again, and you've been trying different things. And I know that you're doing this new venture, which is your mentoring program, which has kind of been an offshoot of the online training. And can you describe, because you've been doing these launches, and I know you've been following Jeff Walker's product launch formula, but then when you did it for the mentoring program, did you do anything differently, or how did that come about?
So the mentoring program is something we've had in the back, both my husband and I have talked about for a few years. We've had it in the back of our minds. And one of the reasons I decided to do it is I have invested so much time, so much energy, and so much money in learning all this stuff that why should we keep it to ourselves? And it would have been great for me if when I started, I could have had a mentor who was familiar with our field. But there weren't any, which is why I really had to, a lot of the people I was learning from had a very heavy commercial thrust, and that's not me personally, and it's also not our market. And so I've had to learn how to do it for a very different kind of market. And so anyway, so we had the idea, and finally we decided, okay, this was the year to do it if people wanted it. And we were perfectly happy for it to go either way. If we had people who wanted it, we'd do it. And if we didn't, we wouldn't. And so we decided that we would both kind of throw our hearts into one email each and really explain why we wanted to do it and what it was about. And then get people on a phone call where we would explain it. And if anybody signed up, we'd go ahead. And if they didn't, we wouldn't. And so just about the exact number of people we wanted to sign up signed up. And now we're started. We had our first live meeting last week, and it's a year-long program. So we'll see by the end of the year if I love it or hate it.
Just another experiment.
It is. It really, in a way it is, because I know we have a lot to offer. And our first meeting, people absolutely loved it. And it's going to be a lot of work, too. So,
and describe, how is it different than what the original training has been? So what's the different aspect to this?
So we've got this divided into 3 sections. One is learning clinical skills. So that's very much like the training. The second part is they have the opportunity to work on their own personal blocks to success. And that's one thing that most mastermind or mentoring groups don't offer, because the people running them are business people. They're not therapists. So but we know how to really work emotionally, because as people are stretching and risking and going for something bigger than they thought they could do, they always run into certain levels of anxiety and fear, and can I do it, or do I deserve this, and a lot of issues that come up. And so we have an opportunity for them to work on those throughout the year. And then the third component is business building. And so we are teaching them marketing skills, internet skills, and helping them conceptualize a way to take their expertise and leverage it. And, we have people with some wonderful different expertise. We have a couple of sex therapists in the program. We have a woman who's very skilled at working with people on the Asperger's and autism spectrum and helping them with their relationships. And so, but they haven't known how to take that onto a broader scale. So we're helping them learn how to do that.
That's so key, because you think about, it's interesting, because in the internet marketing world, people that are focused on specific niches, but there's so many times more traditional business, they don't know how to capitalize on that and how to be able to reach the people that they really want to be able to help, or do something different in a different capacity to help them.
Yeah, and that's one of the beauties of the internet and of targeting. It's that you actually can find ways to reach people who need what you have to offer. And so, when we started, just couples alone was a niche, and now that's not a niche at all. Now people have niched that down into infidelity, for example, or like I said, the Asperger's and autism, or different sexual issues. So there's definitely ways to make the niche even smaller than what we started with.
Wow. What, in terms of, again, because you started out in a traditional role as, a couples therapist and going into this online world, what kind of recommendations would you make to anybody who's, kind of in that offline business and who's looking at how do I expand out into an online business?
Oh, the biggest thing I would say is get help. Get mentoring and get help. And gradually build a team. I'm very happy now and thankful that I have a really good team of people working with me. And I couldn't do it alone. But to begin with, there are ways to start with just using some hours from a VA. But it's the help, it's the learning. It's really getting people who are skilled, who've been there before you, who know what they're doing to help you. And if you, it can be very overwhelming if you don't get some help.
And I mean, that is an expense and an investment that I think people really need to look at. And who are some of the people that you think are doing some pretty novel or interesting education right now?
I've learned a lot recently from Jeff Walker. You mentioned that before. I've learned things from Michael Hyatt and Stu McLaren, and those are probably the most recent people that I've learned from. I learned some things about Facebook advertising from Amy Porterfield. I've learned things from you.
Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I've learned things from you. You were the one who got me over my social media phobia.
Oh, I'm glad I could help.
You just made it sound so calm and reassuring and easy that it just, like, I was willing to I had the same resistance to it as I had to originally doing a website.
Really? And, and it's interesting because it's such a personal industry that you're in, and it's, social media is all about the connection, so.
But that's part of the reason I was reluctant, I think, is that, there's a lot of confidentiality issues in my work, and so you have to be really careful about what's public and what's not public at all.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very true. And what do you like in terms of which social media platform? Is it Facebook, or because I know you talked about you did some work with LinkedIn, or what's working good for you?
The one I'm using most right now is Facebook. This seems to be easier. I mean, I've been in some groups on LinkedIn and had some good discussions on LinkedIn, but the social aspect of Facebook has been working better. What
else do you think I should add? What haven't I asked you that you think would be helpful?
I don't know. I think the only other thing I would say is for people who are going into it, go into it with a long-term view. You get a lot of promotions that, you can get rich quick if you do this or that. And I don't think an internet business is about getting rich quick. I think it's about figuring out what you're passionate about, figuring out who the people are you want to reach and why, and being willing to devote a lot of time and energy to it. What comes back is very, very rewarding, and you have to put out a lot to make it really work.
And how do you envision your next step? Or you're just going to see how this year-long program goes and then decide where you go from there? But do you have any other ideas percolating?
It's more how to build that program. So it's not so much a new idea as how to make that program more accessible to other people as well.
And I think it's interesting because you said that one you're also doing a combination of online but also in person. So you're getting together with your mentees how often?
So they're coming right now 3 times a year for 2 days at a time.
Okay.
And we, like I said, we just started, but boy, did we pack a lot into those 2 days. I mean, there was nobody at the end who said they didn't get their money's worth because there was a ton that we did in that period of time.
And I think that's really becoming the ideal scenario, even with any online training programs, is the ability to bring people together live and in person to get some in-depth kind of training.
The in-depth is great, and the connections of the people with each other so that they can support each other as well as relying on us.
And again, you're doing that. Are you doing that through a private forum on your website, or you're not doing a Facebook group, or how is that set up?
It's set up as a level in our membership site that's just for them. It's a private area just for them.
Yeah, it makes sense under the confidentiality standpoint. You don't want to have any perceived problem with that. So,
right.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ellyn. It's been a pleasure talking to you because I've actually learned a little bit more about all the background and what brought you to this, because I've admired the fact that, one, you've expanded into this online arena. Obviously, it sounds like it started kicking and screaming, but you really embraced it. And the fact that you invest your time and effort in learning more about it and testing and trying new things out. And I guess that's probably a lesson for all of us in terms of, navigating that online world.
I think so. It's like you've got to be willing to win some and lose some and take some risks and just throw yourself into the unknown.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again. And if any of you are interested, or you know people that might be interested in Ellyn's program, her website it's the couplesinstitute.com. Is that the correct one? You have another site for the training specifically, or?
Yeah, the training one is couplesinstitutetraining.com. And the one that has all the free newsletters and blogs for therapists and for the lay public is thecouple.com.
And then,
I'm sorry, it's couplesinstitute.com.
I was trying to make sure that I didn't say the couples. It is couplesinstitute.com. And that's where you can see some of Ellyn and her husband Pete's videos, which are really awesome. Some of them are funny, and just the other ones are just very moving and very, very specific in talking about relationships. And I really enjoy watching those too.
Thank you, Deanna.
Okay, well, thanks again, Ellyn, and thank you all for joining us today. If you have any questions, or you can always contact me at deannafenton.com. And if you like the podcast, please make sure that you leave a review under iTunes. And thanks, and we'll be talking to you again soon.